The smell followed me into this new life. That sickly sweet stench of my own body eating itself alive. The doctors at Mass General called it a necrotizing disease. Some rare flesh-eating nightmare they'd never seen before. But I knew better.
I knew it was that bracelet.
The one my roommate pressed into my hands with that sugary smile. When I opened my eyes this morning, 1 year earlier than I should have, I swore she'd pay. But revenge is never that simple, is it? Here's the thing about waking up in your own past. The first thing you notice isn't the light or the sound. It's the smell.
Vanilla.
Cheap hairspray. That cloying, suffocating sweetness that made me want to claw my own skin off in my previous life. I gasped, and my hands flew to my face. My fingers. They were there. All 10 of them.
No weeping sores.
No exposed bone peeking through rotting flesh. I flipped my hands over, frantic, tracing my knuckles, my cuticles, the smooth, unblemished skin. The skin I'd watched peel away in strips while I lay dying in that sterile isolation ward. Harper. Earth to Harper. You hungover or something? I froze. That voice. High-pitched, dripping with that signature artificial sweetness that used to make me feel warm inside. Now it just made my stomach turn inside out. I lowered my hands slowly and turned toward the doorway of our cramped Boston apartment. And there she stood.
Chloe.
Perfectly pressed cream blouse. That practiced smile. She was holding a small black velvet box, and she looked exactly as she had on September 14th. Exactly 1 year before I died. My heart slammed against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was real. The rebirth was real. I'd read about this in cheap online fiction late at night, but sitting here on my unmade bed with autumn sunlight filtering through the dirty window blinds, the reality of it crashed over me like a wave. I had died in unimaginable agony, betrayed by the girl standing right in front of me and the boyfriend who held her hand while watching me rot. I got you a little something, Chloe said, stepping into the room with that practiced, innocent smile. To celebrate you landing that internship at Harrison and Company. I know I've been a little distant lately, and I just wanted to show you how proud I am. She extended the box toward me. In my past life, I had cried. I'd hugged her, touched by what I thought was genuine kindness. I'd slipped that heavy antique silver bracelet onto my left wrist and felt so loved.
So seen.
I never took it off. Within 3 weeks, the itching started. By month 2, my skin began to blister and peel. By month 4, I was unrecognizable, quarantined in a hospital bed while doctors pumped me full of broad-spectrum antibiotics that did absolutely nothing. And while I lay there dying, my boyfriend David was sleeping in Chloe's bed, securing the very internship I'd been too sick to start. I forced the corners of my mouth up. It took every ounce of self-control not to leap across the room and wrap my hands around her throat. Wow, I managed to croak out, my voice thick. Thank you, Chloe. That's really thoughtful. I reached out and took the box. I didn't open it. I knew exactly what was inside. The intricate silver vines. The tiny, almost microscopic runes etched into the inner band. A blood-leaching antique sheet sourced from some occult dealer online. Designed to transfer the vitality and luck of the wearer straight to the giver. Aren't you going to put it on? She pressed. Her eyes flashing with hungry anticipation, she tried to mask with that bright smile. My wrist is a little swollen today. I lied effortlessly, tossing the box casually onto my nightstand. Slept on it weird. I'll put it on tonight before we go out to celebrate. A flicker of annoyance crossed her perfect features, but she suppressed it quickly. Okay. Well, it's going to look gorgeous on you. The moment she left for her morning classes, I grabbed that box, shoved it deep into my coat pocket, and practically ran out of the apartment. The crisp autumn air of Boston hit my face, but I couldn't breathe. I needed to get rid of it. My first thought was to throw it into the Charles River. But the memory of those occult forums I'd desperately scoured in my past life stopped me cold. The curse required a host. If the intended target discarded the binding object before the link was established, the curse would rebound. Or worse, the giver would simply try again with something else. A laced drink. Tampered cosmetics. A car accident. Chloe wanted my life. If I didn't give her a false sense of security, she'd find another way. I needed someone else to wear that bracelet. The realization made me sick to my stomach. I was planning to do exactly what she had done to me. I walked aimlessly for hours, my boots hitting the pavement, wandering down Tremont Street past bustling cafes and oblivious college students. I was a monster in the making. Just like her, that's when I saw her. She was sitting in an alleyway near the downtown crossing station, huddled under a filthy wool blanket. I'd seen her before in my past life. She was a fixture of this particular street corner. Young, maybe my age, but her life had clearly been brutal. The left side of her face and neck was covered in thick, angry burn scars, puckered and twisted in a way that made people avert their eyes when they walked past. She was shivering, clutching a cardboard sign that had been ruined by the morning drizzle. I stood at the edge of the alley, my hand gripping the velvet box in my pocket. "She is nothing," a dark, insidious voice whispered in my head. "Her life is already a tragedy. She probably won't even notice a rash. Give it to her. Save yourself." I approached slowly. She didn't look up until my shadow fell over her. Her one good eye, a striking, piercing hazel, locked onto mine. There was no fear in her gaze. Just a profound, exhausting emptiness. "I don't have any money," I said quietly, my voice trembling. "But I have this." I pulled the velvet box from my pocket and opened it. The silver bracelet gleamed innocently in the dim alley light. The girl stared at it for a long second, and I thought she was going to spit on my shoes. Instead, a strange, hollow laugh escaped her cracked lips. "A handout," she rasped, her voice like grinding stones. "You giving me jewelry to feel better about your cushy life? College girl." "It's silver," I said, ignoring the barb, my chest tight with guilt. "You can pawn it. It's worth at least a few hundred. Please, just take it." She hesitated, then reached out with a trembling, dirt-caked hand. Her fingers brushed the metal. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because..." I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "I can't bear to wear it." She snatched the box from my hands, snapping it shut. "I'll pawn it by noon," she muttered, turning away from me. Pulling her blanket tighter, I walked away without looking back, tears stinging my eyes. I had survived. But I had just passed a death sentence to a girl who already had nothing, that I couldn't stay away. For the next 3 days, I lived in a state of hyper-paranoid anxiety. Chloe was smug, clearly believing I was wearing the bracelet tucked under my sweaters. She started acting more confident, casually bringing up David, making little comments about how exhausted I looked. She was waiting for my downfall, but I was waiting for something else. That every afternoon, skipping my lectures, I took the red line down to downtown crossing and watched the alley from a coffee shop across the street. On the first day, the girl I learned from a nearby vendor that her name was Abigail didn't pawn the bracelet. To my absolute horror, she had put it on. I saw the glint of silver on her wrist as she reached for a discarded newspaper. Why hadn't she pawned it? Was it the allure of having something beautiful for once? On the second day, the scratching began. I sat in the window booth of the cafe, my coffee growing cold, watching through the glass as Abigail obsessively clawed at her left arm. The motion was sickeningly familiar. I remembered that itch. A deep burning sensation that felt like ants crawling beneath the skin, right along the bone. That I felt a wave of nausea, so intense I had to rush to the cafe bathroom to dry heave. I was a murderer. I was no better than Chloe. By the afternoon of the third day, the skin began to break down. Even from across the street, I could see the angry red inflammation spreading up Abigail's forearm. She had discarded her heavy coat, sweating profusely despite the October chill. She was rocking back and forth, holding her arm, crying out occasionally. The few pedestrians who walked by gave her a wider berth than usual, disgusted by the weeping sores forming on her skin. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to stop this. I had to get the bracelet back. Take it to an occultist. Chop off my own hand. Anything to stop the cycle. I slammed my coffee cup down and bolted out of the cafe, dodging traffic to cross the street. "Abigail?" I shouted, rushing into the damp alley. She flinched violently, pressing her back against the dirty brick wall. When she saw it was me, her eyes widened in terror. The silver bracelet was tightly clamped around her wrist, but the skin around it was a nightmare. The flesh was turning a bruised, necrotic purple, splitting open to reveal raw, yellowing tissue beneath. "Take it off," I screamed, lunging toward her. "I'm sorry."
I'm so sorry.
"You have to take it off right now." "Don't touch me," she shrieked, kicking out at me. Her boot caught my shin, sending me stumbling backward into a pile of trash bags. "You don't understand. It's killing you," I pleaded, scrambling to my knees. "Please let me take it off." "It burns," she wailed, clutching her arm, but then she did something that made my blood run cold. She didn't scratch at the new sores on her arm. She reached up and began to claw at her face. She dug her dirty fingernails into the thick, puckered, burned scars on her left cheek and pulled. I screamed. I expected a fountain of blood. Expected her to rip her own face apart in a frenzy of cursed agony. But there was no blood. The thick scarred tissue tore away like wet paper. Underneath, there was no exposed muscle, no rotting fat. There was only skin. Perfect porcelain. Unblemished skin. I froze, paralyzed by the sheer impossibility of what I was witnessing. The necrotic decay on her arm was spreading. Yes. But as it spread, it seemed to be feeding a horrific, rapid molting process across the rest of her body. Abigail gasped, her chest heaving as she tore larger chunks of scarred flesh from her neck, revealing a smooth, elegant jawline. The cursed magic wasn't just rotting her. It was attacking the trauma that was already there, aggressively breaking down the damaged tissue and replacing it. She ripped the last heavy patch of scar tissue from her forehead, tossing the dead, rubbery flesh onto the wet pavement. She looked up at me, panting heavily. The girl sitting before me was entirely different beneath the grime and matted hair. Her face was striking, aristocratic, and fiercely beautiful, but it was a beauty that sent a shockwave of ice straight through my heart. I knew that nose. I knew the sharp angle of those cheekbones. I looked at those piercing hazel eyes, suddenly seeing them without the distortion of the burns. "You," I stammered, scrambling backward until my back hit the opposite brick wall. "You look just like Chloe," Abigail whispered, her voice no longer a rasping grind but smooth and cold. "She tried to kill me with this exact same curse 5 years ago." She looked down at the silver bracelet on her blistering arm, a dark, knowing smile stretching across her newly perfect face. She looked back at me, her eyes gleaming with terrifying clarity. "Tell me, college girl," she said softly, stepping over her discarded scars and crouching right in front of me. "How exactly do you know my little sister?" Sister. The word felt like sandpaper in my dry throat. My mind spun, trying to reconcile the perfectly polished, vanilla-scented roommate who baked me cupcakes with the monster who had scarred this woman and left her on the streets. Abigail didn't answer immediately. She was still panting, her chest rising and falling heavily beneath the filthy, oversized wool coat. Her hazel eyes, Chloe's eyes, I realized with a sickening jolt, were fixed on the rotting flesh of her left arm. The rapid regeneration of her face had come at a cost. The curse was now aggressively consuming her forearm, purple and black veins webbing their way past her elbow. "My real name is Abigail Montgomery," she said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Heir to the Montgomery real estate fortune out of Connecticut. Our father, Richard Montgomery, had an affair with a maid that produced Chloe. When Chloe's mother died, my father took her in. I tried to treat her like a sister. I shared my clothes, my friends, my life. But Chloe didn't want to share. She wanted to be me." She gritted her teeth, gripping her decaying wrist. 5 years ago, she found out my father was leaving the entire estate to me in his will. That night, she locked me in the east wing of our manor and set it on fire. But she didn't just use gasoline. She used a crude binding hex she bought off some dark web forum to ensure I couldn't escape the flames. I survived, but the hex fused to my skin, burning me from the outside in. By the time I crawled out, I was unrecognizable. She told my father I perished in the blaze. With a melted face and vocal cords damaged from the smoke, I became a ghost. I've been living in the shadows of Boston ever since, watching her spend my inheritance. I sat on the wet asphalt, the freezing puddles soaking through my jeans, utterly paralyzed. In my past life, I had thought my tragedy was unique. I thought I was the sole victim of Chloe's sociopathic ambition. I had no idea I was just a pawn in a much longer, much darker game. But the bracelet, I stammered, pointing at the silver band sinking into her rotting flesh. If she cursed you before, why did this happen? Why did your scars peel away? Abigail let out a dark, humorless chuckle. Because Chloe is a sloppy witch. The bracelet you gave me is a parasite. It's designed to leech the vitality of the host and transfer it to the caster. But because my face was already dead tissue, a remnant of her first curse, this new parasite attacked the old magic first. It consumed the necrotic scar tissue as fuel before it realized what it was doing. It basically gave me the most horrific magical chemical peel in existence. Her knees buckled as she slumped against the brick wall. But it's hungry now, Harper. It ate the scars and now it's eating me. I have maybe 24 hours before this necrosis reaches my heart. We go to a hospital, I said frantically, scrambling to my feet. We cut it off. We amputate the arm. It won't work, Abigail hissed, grabbing my collar with her good hand and pulling me close. You know it won't. You said it yourself in the alley. You couldn't bear to wear it. You know what this is. You know what she is. She stared into my eyes, and I knew I couldn't lie to her. I had died in that hospital bed. Amputation wouldn't stop a spiritual I know, I whispered, tears spilling over my cheeks. I know because she killed me with it before. I woke up a year in the past. I gave it to you to save myself. I'm a coward, Abigail. I'm so sorry. I expected her to strike me, to curse my name, to scream. Instead, a strange calmness washed over her newly restored face. You are surviving, Abigail said coldly, just like I am. But now we have an opportunity. The link is established. The conduit is open. Chloe thinks she's feeding on you right now. If we reverse the polarity of the binding runes, we can send all of this rot straight back to her. How my voice trembled. The curse requires a blood anchor, Abigail explained, struggling to stand. It's currently anchored to my blood. To reverse it, we have to force the bracelet onto Chloe's skin, and it has to mix with her fresh blood. Once her DNA touches the active runes, the parasite will recognize its master. It will rebound with 5 years' worth of compound interest. She'll never let us get close enough, I said. She's incredibly careful. She is careful, Abigail agreed, a lethal smirk forming on her lips. But she thinks you're stupid, and she thinks I am dead. What time is your little celebration dinner tonight? 7, I said, a shiver racing down my spine. My boyfriend David is coming over. They've been sleeping together behind my back. They plan to celebrate my new internship while I rotted away. Abigail's eyes flashed with a predatory glint. Perfect. You're going to go home, Harper. You're going to put on a long-sleeve sweater, and you're going to act like the naive, unsuspecting victim she thinks you are. And at 7 o'clock, you're going to leave the front door unlocked. The smell of garlic and roasting chicken filled our small apartment, completely masking the scent of betrayal. I stood in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with a heavy butcher knife. Every muscle in my body was coiled tighter than a spring. I wore a thick, oversized cashmere sweater, a gift from David, pulled down past my knuckles on my left hand. You look a little pale, babe, David said, leaning against the kitchen counter, sipping a glass of Merlot. He was wearing his expensive navy blazer, the one he wore when he wanted to impress people. He looked so incredibly handsome, and looking at him now, knowing he had held Chloe's hand while I died in quarantine, made me want to bury that butcher knife in his chest. Just a little tired, I forced a sweet, oblivious smile. The internship prep has been exhausting. Chloe glided into the kitchen, looking like an angel in a pale pink slip dress. Oh, honey, don't overwork yourself, she cooed, wrapping her arms around my shoulders from behind. I stiffened, fighting the urge to gag at her vanilla scent. You need to keep your strength up. Did you put the bracelet on? I really want to see it. I did. I lied, keeping my left arm firmly tucked against my stomach. But it's a little big. It keeps slipping up my forearm under the sleeve. I'll show you at dinner. Chloe exchanged a rapid, subtle glance with David. I caught it in the reflection of the microwave window. It was a look of shared malicious triumph. They thought I was already suffering. They thought the poison was setting in. Well, let me help you with the salad, Chloe said, reaching for the chopping board. Click! The sound of the front door unlatching echoed through the quiet apartment. Chloe paused, frowning. Did you invite someone else? No, I said softly, stepping back from the kitchen island, leaving the heavy butcher knife on the cutting board. The hallway was dark, but the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps made the floorboards creak. Chloe wiped her hands on a towel, her perfect brow furrowed in annoyance. Hello, who's there? Out of the shadows of the hallway stepped Abigail. She had washed the grime from her hair, letting the dark Montgomery waves fall over her shoulder. She was wearing my long black trench coat, which I had left for her in the alley. Her face was breathtakingly flawless, a haunting exact mirror of Chloe's aristocratic features, only older, sharper, and filled with a biblical rage. David dropped his wine glass. It shattered on the linoleum, red wine splashing across the white cabinets like blood. Chloe froze. All the color instantly drained from her face.
Her jaw went slack.
Her eyes widened so far I thought they might pop out of her skull. She let out a choked, wet gasp, stumbling backward until her spine hit the refrigerator. Hello, little sister, Abigail said, her voice smooth as glass. No, Chloe whimpered, shaking her head frantically.
No, no, no.
You're dead. I watched you burn. I watched the roof collapse. You watched a girl burn, Abigail corrected, stepping fully into the kitchen light. But you forgot to make sure she died. David, completely bewildered, looked between the two identical women. Chloe, what the hell is going on? Who is this? Chloe didn't look at him. She was hyperventilating, her manicured hands clawing at the kitchen counter. Harper, call the police. Get her out of here. Harper isn't going to do anything, I said coldly, moving to block the kitchen exit. Chloe whipped her head toward me, her facade finally shattering. The sweet, innocent roommate was gone, replaced by a cornered, vicious rat. You? What did you do? You were supposed to wear the bracelet. I gave it to someone who needed it more, I replied, crossing my arms. But Abigail slowly raised her left arm. She pulled back the sleeve of the trench coat. The smell hit the kitchen instantly, a rancid, sweet odor of rotting meat and infected marrow. The skin from her wrist to her elbow was entirely gone, exposing blackened, weeping muscle and the stark white of her radius bone. Clasped tightly around the decaying mess was the silver bracelet, glowing with a faint, sickening violet light. Chloe shrieked, pressing her hands over her mouth. You wanted my life, Chloe, Abigail whispered, stepping closer. You took my face. You took my father. You took my name. And now you try to take Harper's life, too. You are a parasite. But parasites die when they are exposed to the light. David, help me, Chloe screamed, grabbing the butcher knife from the cutting board and brandishing it wildly. Grab her. But David was a coward. He took one look at Abigail's rotting skeletal arm, gagged, and scrambled backward over the broken glass, slipping and falling hard onto the floor. He scrambled away like a frightened crab, pressing himself into the corner of the dining room. Abigail lunged despite the necrosis eating her arm. She moved with the terrifying speed of a woman who had survived 5 years on the unforgiving streets. She tackled Chloe against the kitchen island. The knife slashed through the air, but Abigail caught Chloe's wrist with her good hand, twisting it violently until the blade clattered to the floor. Let me go. Chloe shrieked, kicking and thrashing, scratching wildly at Abigail's face. Her sharp nails caught Abigail's cheek, drawing a thin line of bright red blood. I need your blood, sister, Abigail hissed. With a surge of adrenaline, Abigail forced Chloe's left hand down onto the countertop. With her decaying skeletal left hand, she gripped Chloe's forearm. The silver bracelet, slick with Abigail's infected blood, pressed directly against Chloe's skin. Abigail reached over and grabbed the butcher knife. No, please, Chloe begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I'll give it all back. I'll give you the money. I'll leave the country. Keep it, Abigail snarled, as she brought the blade down, slicing a deep, clean cut straight across Chloe's palm. Chloe screamed, a horrific, piercing sound that rattled the windows. Blood welled up from her palm, thick and crimson, dripping down onto the counter. Abigail immediately shoved the silver bracelet into the pooling blood. The reaction was instantaneous. The silver metal hissed like a brand dropped into ice water. The microscopic runes etched into the band flared with a blinding, searing violet light. The magic, hungry and confused, sensed the DNA of its original master, the blood of the one who had cast the initial binding. Abigail let go and stumbled backward, clutching her chest. Chloe collapsed onto the kitchen floor, clutching her hand. She was hyperventilating, sobbing uncontrollably. "You're insane. You're both insane." But then she stopped crying. She looked down at her arm. The cut on her palm wasn't just bleeding. It was bubbling. A dark necrotic purple bruise exploded outward from the wound, racing up her wrist, past her elbow, and into her shoulder within seconds. "Ah!" Chloe gasped, her eyes rolling back in her head. I watched in stunned silence as the curse reversed. On Abigail's arm, the blackened muscle began to knit together. The stark white bone was swallowed by rapidly regenerating tissue. The weeping sores sealed up into smooth, perfect skin. Within a minute, Abigail's arm was flawless, the silver bracelet dropping harmlessly to the floor with a metallic clink, but Chloe was deteriorating at a terrifying speed. The curse, fueled by the rebound effect and 5 years of stolen vitality, was consuming her alive. Her beautiful blonde hair began to fall out in clumps. The skin on her face, the face she had stolen from her sister, began to sag, blister, and turn a sickening shade of gray. David, witnessing this supernatural horror unfolding before him, let out a pathetic whimper, scrambled to his feet, and bolted out the front door, leaving Chloe to her fate. "Harper," Chloe croaked, reaching a blistering, decaying hand out toward me. Her voice sounded like dry leaves crushing together. "Help me." I looked down at the girl who had sentenced me to a slow, agonizing death in a hospital bed just one lifetime ago. I felt no pity. I felt no remorse. "My wrist is a little swollen today, Chloe," I said softly, looking down at her with dead eyes. "I think I'll skip dinner." Abigail stepped up beside me, pulling my trench coat tight around her perfectly restored body. She looked down at the writhing, decaying mass that used to be her sister, a look of profound peace settling over her aristocratic features. "Come on," Abigail said, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Let's leave her to her meal." We walked out of the apartment, leaving the door wide open. Stepping out into the cool, crisp Boston night, I took a deep breath. The suffocating smell of vanilla was finally gone, replaced by the sharp, clean scent of a second chance. Revenge is a dish best served with a heavy dose of supernatural karma. What would you have done if you woke up in the same room as the person who murdered you? If this twisted tale of betrayal, bloodlines, and dark magic kept you on the edge of your seat, share it with your friends. And stay safe out there.